Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining Deepak and I today as we go through the IAM Identity Center integration with QuickSight, where administrators can create a new QuickSight account and allow IAM Identity Center to configure organization identity provider. And so now that we've set the stage for our let's dive into the key pieces we'll be exploring today. Our agenda is structured to provide a comprehensive understanding on this integration. We will start by examining data access as a whole, and then go into detail on IAM Identity Center, which will follow with the two different flows, which we'll see demoed by Deepak. Let's begin with our first point of focus, which is our data management. So here, let's talk about it within simple terms. So our database admins need to manage access to data based on information that different groups of people need. To do this, they organize data and permissions based on the groups. They might have a yellow table for the yellow group, a gray table for the gray group, and a green table for the green group. So in AWS, they ultimately need to manage this access using IAM roles, so they grant the team in their respective role colors. This all makes sense. But although IAM roles are super powerful and flexible, they're a great way of securing resources access for workloads, they're not well suited for user-centric workloads. So a lot of data applications like BI tools are used by less technical end users. These people might have questions such as, what's a role? Or I do what before I use the BI dashboard? Or what's an AWS console? More sophisticated users that have figured out roles might ask why they can't access their green data or the yellow data through just one role instead of being able to switch back and forth. And so in response, data admins have figured out how to create roles that model the different groups in the organization. And that can be really challenging for people who are in multiple groups. Then you have IDP admins who have to figure out how to assign the right IDP groups to the right roles. And then there's also auditors. And this is where they have to go through and look at logs and see data was accessed by a role. But it's really hard to figure out who those users are and what did they access. This can be a challenge to ensure that data keeps up with the changing business needs when several stakeholders need to be involved to make changes to data pipelines, business KPI definitions, and access controls. Organizations are thinking of their data as an asset for their business and enabling their lines of business to own and treat their data like a product. This makes it really hard to do end-to-end seamless user authentication based on their identity. So at first, AWS started as a platform for builders with IAM users and groups and accounts with services. IAM users are long-term credentials that people or services use, permission policies that are assigned to IAM users and IAM groups directly, and users would then access services based off of the permissions they had. Customers asked for a better way for their people to access AWS accounts based on the identities they already had. With the focus primarily on builders and the ability to use advanced fine-grained controls of IAM roles, AWS added ability to use federated users by connecting an identity provider to an AWS account. Users then can sign in to the IDP, and the IDP issues a token that specifies which roles the federated user can access. The user then selects a role based on what they want to do, and they would use the role to access the AWS services, which might also use the role to get a different service. Although this simplifies user sign-in, this model requires customers to manage permissions in each account separately. So customers also told us it's hard to understand which users used which services because the user identity was lost after a user assumed a role and wanted a better way to track that. For AWS managed applications, the account federated model was a challenge because users had to assume a role to access something, and the application had to try and figure out who the user was based on the assumed role. So to address that, each application had to build their own independent federated capability, or customers had to build out these really large, complex role management systems that better represented their users. But now, so in 2017, AWS introduced AWS Single Sign-On, which is now called AWS IAM Identity Center. So rather than federating to every AWS account, the idea was to have your identities in one place where they are usable for a single sign-in to AWS in one place and give users access across hundreds or thousands of accounts in an AWS organization. As in the past, we were focused heavily on account access for builders, while making it easier to manage permissions and assignments for people. This gave admins one place to define and assign access to accounts. In addition, because this was targeted to human access and Identity Center controlled the access, customers now had logs of which people accessed which accounts. Initially enabled customers to connect, so Microsoft Active Directory domain services for customers who struggled with using ID federated services. Because these customers were trading ADFS for a simpler way to access AWS, we included basic support for users to access custom or manage third-party SAML 2.0 applications so that people can sign into Salesforce, Box, and other applications using their Active Directory identity. Later, we enabled creation of users, their credentials, and groups directly in Identity Center to address customers who didn't use or want Active Directory domain service. In 2019, we added support for using an external identity provider, beginning with Azure AD. When we did this, we standardized on synchronizing users and groups metadata into Identity Center, and Identity Center redirected authentication to your selected identity source. This gave AWS Cloud a consistent understanding of your users and groups to authorize their access in AWS, which enabled you to choose where you manage your users and groups and their credentials. We also made it possible for AWS managed applications to integrate with and use Identity Center. This eliminated the need for each application to build their own federation and allowed for applications to have a shared understanding of the users and groups without building independent users and group synchronization mechanisms, and it enabled the applications to start authorizing access to their resources based on users and groups rather than requiring users to assume a role before entering an application. Since 2019, we worked with IDP vendors to support Ping, Okta, OneLogin, CyberArk, JumpCloud, and most recently Google Workspaces, which gives customers choice in where they want to manage their users. Identity Center is the best way for customers to manage access for their workforce to AWS accounts and supported AWS managed applications such as QuickSight. With this release, administrators can create a new QuickSight account and select IAM Identity Center to configure QuickSight with their organization's identity provider or with the IAM Identity Center Identity Store without requiring additional single sign-on configurations in QuickSight. So what they can do is they can use the supported identity providers group to assign QuickSight roles, which would consist of administrator, author, reader, and so forth, as you all are familiar when it comes to our users. Amazon QuickSight users can seamlessly sign in to QuickSight with their organization's identity provider from the AWS Access portal or directly from QuickSight and share those assets with their users and groups. If you are, however, thinking of using namespaces or multi-tenancy or setting up custom permissions, this is not yet supported with the Identity Center integration. Let's go through the sign-in flow architecture that Deepak will be demoing today. So after he's gone through setting up the AWS account in the same organization as IAM Identity Center and completing the subscription to QuickSight with IAM Identity Center, these are the two sign-in flows that Deepak will demo. The first one is our QuickSight service provider initiated sign-in. This means that Deepak will load the QuickSight application URL and will automatically redirect to the sign-in page of the configured IDP. And upon that successful authentication, Deepak will then be redirected to QuickSight. In our second one, this is our AWS Access Portal Service Provider Initiated Sign-in. This means that Deepak will load the AWS Access Portal URL, and it will automatically redirect to the sign-in page of the configured IDP. After authenticating, Deepak will then choose the QuickSight application tile in the AWS Access Portal, and this will then redirect to QuickSight. All right, with that, we're now going to dive into the demo.
So we'll look at the two flows that Bashi talked about SP initiated, which is service provider initiated, user starting. But before that, we need to set up organization and QuickSight. So we want to make sure organization is set up. For example, I have 2 accounts here. And then you want to enable IAM Identity Center as well. Now, IAM Identity Center, you can use it as an identity store, creating users and groups here. Or you can integrate third-party identity providers such as Okta, Ping, or any SAML-based, right? Then federate users from those IDPs in IAM Identity Center. For this use case, I have created users and groups in IAM Identity Center. So we will look at those users, right? What are those different types of users? So for example, I've created reader, author, and admin users. And similarly, I have reader, author, admin groups as well. And then when we create a QuickSight account, we will map these user groups in QuickSight. Key thing to remember is that you want to subscribe to a brand new QuickSight account for this integration purpose. So this works only when you are creating a new QuickSight account. If you have existing QuickSight account, then you have to choose some other options as well. So let's look at creating a brand new QuickSight subscription here, right? So we click on QuickSight, and then you sign up for QuickSight. And then select one of the options. I'm going to select Enterprise as is. I don't need paginated reporting for the demo. And I think the key thing here is the authentication method, right? So you will see there's a new authentication method now available after IAM Identity Center integration was enabled. It's called Use AWS IAM Identity Center, right? So of the 4 methods, this is the method you want to select when you are integrating IAM Identity Center with QuickSight. And then give an account name, so QLS demo. IDC, right? And hit configure. So when that happens, now as you can see, QuickSight is recognizing groups that can be mapped from IAM Identity Center in QuickSight, right? And when you check for it, you can see IAM Identity Center groups are listed here. So let's map those groups. Demo, author to author group, and then reader to reader groups. Right. So again, key thing is we are not mapping users. We are just mapping groups that we have created in IAM Identity Center during the account subscription process. Now let's add an email ID where all the notifications will go. So I'm going to enter my ID. I will use the default IAM role and then click finish. So with that, what we have done is we have enabled the integration between IAM Identity Center and QuickSight, and now let's log in QuickSight, right? So go to Amazon QuickSight. And now this is the SP initiated workflow where user is trying to log in QuickSight, but they haven't logged into IAM Identity Center. So QuickSight is routing them to log into IAM Identity Center. So we enter the user ID for a reader, and then we enter the password for the reader, right? Again, this is a SP initiated where the service provider user starts, accessing QuickSight directly. So once I click on it, and then I'm able to access QuickSight as a reader. So as you can see, I don't have access to any analysis or any data set creation, only the dashboards that I have access to. And also if I can go to the user, you can see this is a reader user with no access to manage QuickSight, right? Now, what if we have to change this users to author user? Remember we had created reader, author, and admin users. So when we select the QuickSight redirects you to IAM Identity Center login, and there you're going to enter IAM user along with the author, and then we enter the credentials for the author user, right? So when author user logs in by providing their IAM Identity Center credentials or identity provider credentials, they are logged in as an author, and they now have access to analysis data sets, and I can click on one of those analysis, be able to make changes to it. And then also if I look at the, and publish it, right? And when I look at the permissions, I still don't have the manage QuickSights, which is enabled only for admin users. So let's log in as an admin. Okay, so let's change this to demo admin. And enter the password for admin user. Now you will see a difference in access and privileges, right? Previously it was author, now it's an admin. So when I log in as admin, I do have access to admin privileges. I can go to manage QuickSight, and then I can see I have access to spice capacity. I have access to subscriptions here in a moment, right? So this flow is called SP initiated workflow, right? Where user tried to log into QuickSight and then they were routed to IAM Identity Center. Now let's go to identity provider initiated flow, where user is going to log first directly into IAM Identity Center application. And when they log in, they will see this application tile that was created because of the QuickSight IDC integration, right? So we will click on that tile, and then that tile will take us to QuickSight. Now, as you can see, QuickSight is enabling SSO, so user doesn't have to enter any credentials. And then this was an admin user. And so admin user has access to manage QuickSights, right? Now let's log in as an author from IAM Identity Center, right? And see what does it look like. Again, key thing is to remember the flow. Either you're going as IDP initiated user workflow, or you're going through SP initiated workflow. Once a user has logged into IAM Identity Center, SSO will be enabled in both flow. And if user has not logged in, then user will be redirected to go to IAM Identity Center and enter their credentials. So in this case, I will log in as an author, but directly going to IAM Identity Center application, logging as demo author, and then let's enter the password. So when I log in, I see these two application tiles, which I have access to. Because I have two QuickSight accounts, I have access to both application tiles. In this case, I will access the one I just created as part of the demo, which is QLS Demo IDC. And when I click on it, it will take me to that account. And then I'll have access to the assets in that account, right? So you can see I have access to analysis, data sets, dashboards, all things together. Right. And then you can see I won't have access to manage QuickSights as well. Let me just do this. Yep. So as an author, I don't have access to manage QuickSights. Now, we looked at the both workflows, IDP initiated workflow where user logs into IAM Identity Center and SSO enabled access to QuickSight, or QuickSight initiated where user is routed to IAM Identity Center and provide their credentials. Now let's look at an experience where if you have IAM, you are an IAM admin, what does that experience looks like for you? When you want to admit yourself onto admin, I have access to account, and then I want to log in as IAM admin only. So it will take me to management console because I am an IAM admin. I have access to console. And then once I go there and log into QuickSights from console, then that experience will be a bit different than logging as an admin from QuickSight, right? So I'm logging to QuickSight as an IAM admin, and you will see it's a different experience because these actions or these features require access to IAM permissions. And then you can log into QuickSight as a QuickSight admin, and you can see full flow of access and privileges as part of your managed QuickSights. And because you logged in as IAM admin, you can manage assets, manage VPC configurations, you can do any of those activities. So with that, we conclude the session. We conclude the demo for the two flows, IDP initiated flow, as well as the SP initiated workflow. So let me stop sharing, and then Maddie, I'm gonna hand it back over to you.
Here are the references to today's topic. Before we wrap up, I just want to highlight our other community events. We have this recurring learning series that is for global time zones in America, Europe, and Asia. And then we also have monthly online recurring learning events, including new features that happens every first Friday, immersion events, and introduction to QuickSight. So if you are new and wanting to learn more, highly recommend joining that, which is every first and third Thursday.